Hey, good afternoon. This is Meredith Lego, and I'm doing a series of videos on Ascension science. Today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I asked that has to do with what I understood to be a basically frequency net that had at some point in a long time ago history of Earth been put around the Earth, essentially to sort of kind of mess with the frequency of the beings on Earth. And it was done in the form of sort of creating almost a doorway to access the 12th dimensional Stargate, so to speak. So I had read about that, and I wanted to better understand more about the net. I didn't necessarily ask about the 12th dimensional Stargate because that creates another pathway through the normal ascension process for beings. But I wanted to better understand what the frequency net was and what that had to do with the raising of consciousness. Now, frequency obviously is the rate at which different waves go out there and the rate at which different cells vibrate. So essentially frequency is important. We're 100% energy and matter, and we have different frequency in which we're constantly vibrating. So the idea that some group or some beings had actually put a net sort of around the planet, obviously it was troubling to me, and I wanted to understand that. So let me go to what I learned. Now, as I'm going to read this is actually the first time that I had two different groups offer a perspective to my question. So that when I was asking the question originally, essentially I asked, I understand that a frequency net was put around Earth a while back to lock down certain species into our dimensional and our density reality. So I said the third density. What does ascension and the rising of vibrational frequency and consciousness have to do with this barrier? So again, it was my understanding that the barrier was put in place essentially to stop humans as well as other beings from sort of raising vibrational frequency, but was kind of curious about that. Now, the first answer came from Ascended Master Hilarion, who, if you've watched my historic videos, essentially has provided a lot of content. And his answer was, first of all, he said, fine-tune your thinking. He's often said to me in the past, stop getting caught up in quote-unquote conspiracy. They don't matter. So basically, fine-tune your thinking. Those are only games intended to test and challenge consciousness and evolution. The true path of ascension occurs with mastery of the four lower bodies to improve the vibrational spin rate of quantum particles in the physical and etheric matter. This occurs in many ways through the stages. Physical, number 1. Release toxins in the physical body that vibrate lower, including trapped energy. Eating vibrationally high vibrating food, sustaining and maintaining a body high in vitality and vibrance. Eliminating addictions. 2. Emotional. Doing and thinking about the items that bring you joy, happiness, and completion. Eliminating toxic emotions from all lives, trapped in the emotional blueprint, and all miasmas from the DNA. So let me pause right there. When he's basically saying eliminate toxic emotion from all lives, that's referencing not just this life, but also parallel and past lives, or even future lives that your soul experiences, because again, all time is now. And if you go to historic videos, there was one session in which I related the fact that when you start to get to the point of higher sensory perception where you're tuning into other lives that you've lived, you're sometimes tuning into the collective or the human collective or the oversoul group of lives. So you're working on releasing any sort of triggers or traumas or blocked energy that accrued through those lives, and some of it can be in the future because all time is now. He also references the releasing of miasmas from the DNA, and that's another way of basically talking about trapped energy that gets built up within the DNA of your ancestors. So, you know, your grandparents, your parents, your grandparents, and kind of so on through the historic DNA sort of carry forward. And that's essentially what you're working on releasing as well. And you see that actually play out quite a bit in society today, where certain different demographic groups within society are basically working on releasing a lot of stuff. And you see it play out politically, but it could also be essentially trapped emotions that were built in within the DNA stream as well. The third is mental, staying focused on how to maintain the higher self access to the avatar body, thinking pure, high vibrational thoughts, and eliminating judgment, doubt, and fear. And then 4, integrating all levels of polarity into all bodies, finding the neutral point in all moments with full realization that all is one and source. This process elevates a being's consciousness, and hence the vibrational energy is clear. Mental thoughts and intentions are controlled. So that was the answer that Hilarion provided to the question around the frequency net. So he didn't necessarily get into the frequency net, but you know, he basically said, stop thinking about that. Don't hone in on conspiracy. Focus on, again, what's most important about the ascension process. Now, at this particular point, another group sort of butted into the conversation, if you will, and I immediately heard Pleiadeans. They tend to be more sing-songy, so you'll notice a difference in their response. And they were attempting to essentially address the same question. Darkness is just the absence of light, but it is always within, stirring like a beacon of hope and building reserves for the time and space when it is needed the most. For it only takes one photon to light the way. The thresholds of time are collapsing and unfolding for a new dawn, a new day. And then I asked them, why was a frequency net put in place? Consciousness fell to protect others and provide a safe solution. So a safe solution was developed to maintain low consciousness manifestations in a container, so to speak. So I don't think I typed that quite out well from my notes, but essentially what they're saying is that consciousness, I'm assuming, on the planet fell. So in order to protect others, possibly outside in other dimensional worlds, or maybe in the same density, I'm not sure, essentially a container, I'm guessing a frequency net, was put into place as a safe solution in order to maintain the low conscious manifestations that we as humans were generating in time, and to sort of contain it so it didn't harm others. Now they go on to say that, but it quickly turned and devolved into reoccurring cycles of closed loop reaction. For the souls trapped in the containment field knew and targeted others, through lower consciousness. They forgot their light and its source. But it, as in light, is still burning as a small pilot flame for many, waiting to be relit. For others, a fire once again burns bright, and they light the way and serve as a warm beacon of hope for others. For you see, beacons are like lighthouses. They don't necessarily need to take drastic action to change others. They just need to continuously show the light and the warmth. The seekers of the light who are ready will always be attracted and will seek what enables those flames to burn so bright. They too will want to relight their pilot flames. Soon, many fires will ablaze across the planet, and when they do, and when consciousness collectively remembers their light, fused in one large flame of immense brightness, unified as one glorious beacon of love, truth, and compassion. The frequency net will no longer be needed for those individual manifestations. They will vibrate higher than the rate of the net and will rejoice, brothers and sisters, in glorious and victorious glory. So that was basically the answer from the Pleiadeans on that particular question, and they actually ended by saying Pleiadeans again. But that's pretty interesting. So again, they're basically saying, look, a net was put in place because we were in a situation where low consciousness had sort of ascended onto the planet, and they needed to essentially block off the creeping of that low consciousness, almost like you kind of want to block off a virus from sort of spreading to other dimensions or possibly other beings. But in the process of that happening, there was essentially a closed loop process that ended up getting started, and maybe that's the whole concept of sort of being trapped within the incarnational cycle, specifically tied to Earth. But they do provide a lot of interesting analogies going to light the fact that, and I love the first statement, darkness is simply just the absence of light, but it's always sitting within, waiting to be relit. And so I think the most important message here is that the most important thing that you can do, not only for yourself, but really to help others on this planet. So if you want to be service to others, is simply be the light, show the light, provide that compassion, that joy, bring joy into others' light, because essentially you become a lighthouse through that process. And when you do, others will be strongly attracted to that light and that energy that you give off and want to achieve some of it within themselves. And they'll try and figure out, how come you have so much light within you? How come you're always so happy and joyous? And what brings so much energy into your life? And you can share that with them. And if they're motivated, they will try and seek some of that within themselves. And then they too can pass that on. And pretty soon it becomes so infectious that, we start to make a wave across the planet. That's essentially what they're saying, is that soon many fires will ablaze. And when we collectively remember that all of our collective light will be fused together and will be quite immense brightness for, I'm sure, interdimensional beings to see the brightness within us, and we'll essentially be able to overcome frequency nets like that. So I thought that was a very beautiful and powerful message about our true ability to be a lighthouse and to help tear down any frequency nets. So with that, I hope this message has helped you with your journey, and I'll see you in some future videos. Take care.